Torrential rain batters the country's central region and the capital as monsoon season starts on the peninsula. A car crashed onto a sidewalk in Seoul late last night, killing 9 people and injuring 4. Police are looking into what caused the fatal accident, as the driver claims sudden unintended acceleration. The nation's inflation continued to slow in June, only to accelerate 2.4%, but prices of fresh produce and petroleum products remain a concern. It's July 2nd, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon. We start with torrential rain that's been pounding the country. More rain is expected until tomorrow. For more, we have our Choi Soo-hyung standing by in central Seoul. Soo-hyung, what's it like there?
Yes, Jungmin, as you can see just behind me, I'm just right now under the Jamsugyo Bridge, one of the main bridges crossing the Hangang River in Seoul. It's just raining slightly for now. As the monsoon season begins in South Korea, officially on Jeju Island 2 weeks ago, there have been occasional outbursts of rain, but not much. But as of this morning, heavy rain started pounding the southern region and is slowly moving northward, sweeping across the nation. Currently, it has almost stopped raining in the south of the country, but heavy rain is expected to fall in the capital area. According to the weather authorities today, there will be heavy rainfall of 30 to 50 millimeters per hour overall, but a total of between 80 millimeters and 120 millimeters will pour down on the capital and central regions until tomorrow. Usually, rainfall exceeding 15 millimeters per hour is considered heavy, while at 30 millimeters per hour is hard for people to even see what's in front of them.
I see. And Soo-hyung, how are the authorities dealing with the situation?
Right, with heavy rainfall sweeping across the nation, the Ministry of Interior and Safety raised its heavy rainfall warning level from interest to caution on Tuesday morning. The ministry also ordered a level 1 activation of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters. With the start of the monsoon season here, the ministry plans to specifically monitor areas at risk of flooding, such as underpasses, riverbanks, and underground parking lots, which it could order closed, while providing alternative routes. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo also instructed thorough safety measures and a close monitoring of the situation to prevent casualties and damage. The authorities will help residents living in areas at risk of landslide and flooding to ensure they can evacuate immediately if dangerous situations occur. Also, the government is advising people to stay away from streams and rivers that are prone to flooding. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Jungmin.
Our Choi Soo-hyung reporting live from the Jamsugyo Bridge. Thank you. Also on the local front, a shocking car crash in the capital last night killed 9 people. Police are looking into what the driver claims as sudden unintended acceleration. An Sung-jin has the latest.
A devastating scene in downtown Seoul on Monday night. A car drove into a group of pedestrians waiting at a crosswalk, killing 9 people and injuring 4 others near Seoul City Hall at around 9:27 p.m. The driver, a 68-year-old man with more than 40 years of experience as a city bus driver, is blaming sudden unintended acceleration. A witness at the scene is saying otherwise.
마지막에 밟은 거예요. 저기 앞에서. 다 치고 나서, 거의 치고 나서요. 그 앞에서. 급발진 차량은 사고 날 때 알잖아요. 전봇대라도 박아야 되잖아요. 그거 없어서 그냥 거기서 딱 멈췄어요.
An expert said that the driver did not try to avoid the pedestrians as you would in case of a sudden acceleration, adding that the deadly accident could have simply been caused by a mistake or carelessness. The vehicle was also seen driving in the wrong direction and collided with 2 vehicles before hitting people. Investigators are not fully ruling out the possibility of issues within the car considering the speed involved, reportedly 100 kilometers per hour.
We specifically checked whether or not he was drinking, and it is understood that he was not under the influence of alcohol.
The police took the driver in on charges of accidental homicide, which falls under violations of the Special Act on the Settlement of Traffic Accidents. In a later briefing, the police stated that the driver was negative in all quick drug tests and had been taken to hospital due to injuries he himself suffered in the accident. Analysis will be carried out by the National Forensic Service on the driver's vehicle, footage from nearby CCTV cameras, and the car's dash cam, as well as statements from witnesses. However, analysis from the National Forensic Service using its event data recorder system can take up to 2 months. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, North Korea says it tested a tactical ballistic missile carrying a super-large warhead on Monday. South Korea's military, however, yet again dismisses the claim, suggesting one of the 2 missiles launched yesterday fell near Pyongyang. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung has this report.
North Korea on Tuesday morning claimed that it successfully tested a new type of tactical ballistic missile carrying a 4.5-ton super-large warhead the day before. This is the first time that the North has said it tested such a missile. The North state-run media said that the test of the new missile, named Hwasongpo 11 Ta 4.5, was conducted with a mock warhead aimed at verifying flight stability and accuracy to see if it can fly a maximum range of 500 kilometers and minimum range of 90 kilometers. South Korea's military, however, dismissed the North's claim, calling it a deception. According to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the regime launched 2 ballistic missiles, one which flew some 600 kilometers into the sea, and the other which traveled only 120 kilometers. The military once again suggested that the second launch was abnormal and appeared to have fallen in a field in an uninhabited area near the North's capital.
It is extremely rare to conduct a test launch inland, and there is a high possibility that its claim of success is a lie.
Last week, North Korea claimed a successful test of a new multi-warhead missile, contrasting with South Korea's assessment of a failure after a mid-air explosion. The regime's continued claims that appear to be false reveal that the North is trying to cover up its series of military failures, beginning with the recently failed launch of its spy satellite. An expert says the contradicting claims by the 2 Koreas have always been present.
When we take a look at past cases with regard to the success of these missile launches, North Korea treats even the smallest success as a great one, while our military assesses North Korea's small failures as major failures. This is being repeated to this day.
Meanwhile, more missile launches are expected as Pyongyang said it will carry out another test launch of the same type of missile this month to test the accuracy and the explosion power of the super-large warhead. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The South Korean army has resumed live-fire artillery drills near the border with North Korea for the first time in 6 years. The South Korean military announced Tuesday that the army carried out firing drills using K9 self-prepared artillery units, among others, in Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces. This is the first time such an exercise has taken place within 5 kilometers of the military demarcation line since the Inter-Korean Military Agreement was signed in 2018. Early last month, Seoul suspended all clauses of the agreement following North Korea's continued provocations, including sending balloons carrying waste over the border. President Yoon Suk-yeol will be dealing with an opposition-led National Assembly for the remainder of his term. With that in mind, today he called for cooperation with the government, urging to end conflicts and confrontation. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers his remarks.
With just days to go until the opening ceremony for the 22nd National Assembly, President Yoon on Tuesday emphasized the need for the executive and legislative branches of the government to work together, saying that there was no future if the nation's politics repeated previous conflicts and confrontation.
국정의 목표, 정치의 목표는 하나입니다. 민생의 어려움을 해결하고 국민을 더 행복하게 만드는 것입니다. 이러한 목표만큼은 정부와 국회가 다르지 않다고 저는 믿습니다.
This, part of his address to a cabinet meeting, comes as Yoon faces an opposition-led assembly until the end of his term. Just the day before, Yoon's close aides, including his chief of staff, were called to appear before the House Steering Committee, whose opposition party members grilled them well into the night about several issues related to the presidential office. Now, a 3-day interpellation session has also kicked off. Yoon's spokesperson said that during the cabinet meeting, the president ordered his aides to take the time to explain in detail to lawmakers and citizens about the government's focuses: proactive global diplomacy, a free market economy led by the private sector, and welfare for the socially vulnerable.
The president said that our government's proactive global diplomacy is not focused on domestic political calculations, but rather on expanding the horizons of diplomacy to enable our businesses and citizens to participate more extensively on the international stage.
He also emphasized that for the economy to thrive, businesses must grow, underscoring that proactive global diplomacy is directly tied to the well-being of the people. Yoon also mentioned that the country's low birth rate and aging population have reached a state of a national emergency that requires urgent attention. Amid fierce clashes between the ruling and opposition parties, Yoon also raised the need to narrow differences through rational dialogue and consensus, saying the government and parliament both share the goal of improving the people's livelihoods. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Starting today, lawmakers are quizzing government officials in Parliament until Thursday. This comes after rival parties recently finalized the formation of the 22nd National Assembly after a month of wrangling. For more, our political correspondent Shin Ha-young joins us in the studio to give us the overall picture and what's to come next. Good to see you, Ha-young.
Great to be here, Jung-min.
First, what does the formation of the new assembly look like?
Well, Jung-min, after weeks of bipartisan wrangling, the rival parties last week finally decided on how to share the leadership position of standing committees. And this is almost a month after the 22nd National Assembly commenced its 4-year term. And for the next 2 years, the ruling People Power Party will lead 7 committees, including strategy and finance, where the government's spending plans are approved. And the majority Democratic Party will head 11 committees, such as House Steering, which is in charge of issues related to the president's office. And it is customary to divide the 18 standing committee chair positions in proportion to the number of seats held by each party.
Ha-young, the rival parties have clashed a lot, causing delays in forming standing committees. What is behind the delays and what does that tell?
Well, actually, the main reason behind that is the competition for key committee chair posts, which are Judiciary, House Steering, and also including the broadcasting committees. And the PPP called for negotiations to secure the judiciary leadership, claiming that it is crucial for partially preventing the majority DP from pushing through all its bills. And this is because the DP has the authority to review, revise, and even reject bills before they go to a final vote. And in the end, the ruling party accepted the 7 other standing committee chair positions proposed by the DP, stating that they could no longer delay forming the assembly due to urgent issues affecting people's livelihoods. And one thing I'd like to point out here is that despite their conflicts, both parties share the same priority of focusing on people's livelihoods in the new assembly. First, let's take a listen to what each party had to say.
We will prioritize passing bills and allocating the budget to address urgent issues regarding people's livelihood announced on May 31st. We will now shift the focus of the National Assembly from political conflicts to taking care of people's livelihood.
Currently, pending issues regarding people's livelihoods have accumulated across standing committees. Delaying the passage of a special act, which supports the victims of real estate fraud, will only worsen public suffering. The DP will push to speed up the passage of the bill.
The PPP announced its first set of bills in the new assembly focused on improving people's livelihoods. And this includes establishing a government body focused on tackling the low birth rate. And it will also push to abolish taxes on financial investments and reform the inheritance tax rate. And on the other hand, the DP introduced what it calls a #1 livelihood bill, which if enacted would provide vouchers worth around 250,000 Korean won or around $180 to people in Korea. And they say the voucher will boost spending and help revive the economy.
The parliament is now ready to work at full capacity. What are their key tasks?
Well, Jungmin, people are expecting to see what's being called a working National Assembly from the newly formed parliament. And the assembly is actually also working on to make some efforts to address the people's needs. And meanwhile, according to the National Assembly bill information, as of Monday, a total of 1,248 bills have been proposed within the month since the start of the assembly, setting a new record. However, while eyes are on whether the new assembly will be more productive, some worry that excessive legislative competition may lead to poorly created bills, resulting in few being passed. And this is because the previous parliament also set records for bills, but actually had the lowest passage rate. And at the 22nd National Assembly, pending issues include tackling the low birth rate, aging population, and national pension reform. And in the previous assembly, the rival parties launched a special committee for pension reform, but were unable to reach a consensus.
And finally, walk us through some key events for the new assembly.
Sure. As you said in the beginning, starting today, lawmakers are quizzing government officials during parliamentary Q&A session. And today's session focuses on politics, diplomacy, and security. And after Q&A session, the opposition-led assembly is planning to vote on a special prosecution investigation into the death of a Marine. And in response, the PPP is planning to try to block the bill with a filibuster. And a bill with the same goals was also passed in the previous 21st National Assembly, but was vetoed by President Yoon. And meanwhile, the 3-day session will bring the June extraordinary session to an end, and representatives of the two sides will take the podium next week following the 22nd National Assembly's opening ceremony on July 5th. So I guess we'll have to keep a close eye on the future development.
All right. Thanks for the report today, Hayo.
My pleasure.
Korea's consumer price index accelerated 2.4% in June, the slowest pace in almost a year. But high costs of fresh produce and petroleum products remain a concern. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun reports.
Inflation in South Korea is showing signs of stabilizing in the 2% range despite continued high prices for fruit. Data from Statistics Korea on Tuesday shows that the country's consumer price index, a key gauge of inflation, rose by 2.4% in June compared to the same month the year before. This is the lowest figure seen in 11 months, inching closer to the target inflation at 2%. The rise in consumer prices hovered above 3% at the start of the year before dropping below the 3% mark in April and remaining in the 2% range for 3 consecutive months. Core inflation excluding volatile food and energy prices came to 2.2%, while the index measuring 144 daily necessities rose by 2.8%. Prices for fresh produce drove these figures, with the cost of fresh fruit rising by more than 31% on year. Apple prices jumped over 63%, while the cost of pears more than doubled. Petroleum prices also showed the largest hike in a year and a half, surging by 4.3%, with a spokesperson from Statistics Korea claiming that this was due to the base effect of petroleum prices being low this time last year. Speaking at a meeting to discuss these latest figures, the first Vice Minister of Economy and Finance said that this falls in line with earlier predictions from the government for prices stabilizing in the mid-2% range in the second half of the year. Meanwhile, the Agriculture Ministry pledged to stabilize the supply and demand of vegetables vulnerable to summer rain and heat, as well as preemptively managing potential risks such as diseases affecting fruit trees. Starting yesterday, the government applied a new tariff quota to 7 different types of food ingredients such as coffee concentrate, as well as extending the lower tariffs on 28 types of fruit until the end of September. It will also strengthen inspections on the oil market after the partial return of taxes that scaled back the fuel tax cut on gasoline from 25% to 20%. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In sports news, Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism on Tuesday announced detailed support plans for Team Korea at the Paris 2024 Olympics. From July 12th to August 11th, a base camp will be set up at the National Center of La Défense in Fontainebleau, providing accommodation, training facilities, and medical services. Badminton, boxing, and judo athletes will have their training partners there to help them prepare. And to promote Korean culture during the Olympics, the ministry will open the Korea House at the Maison de la Chimie Conference Center in the French capital. This venue will host a hanbok fashion show, exhibitions, K-pop classes, and music performances. The games will run from July 26th to August 11th. The eldest member of K-pop boy band sensation BTS Jin will reportedly be a torchbearer at the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics. He will depart for France shortly to participate in the torch relay for the Olympics, while the exact location and schedule have not been disclosed yet. After carrying the torch in the Olympics as the first BTS member to complete his mandatory military service, Jin is set to make his official comeback to the entertainment industry with variety show appearances and the release of a new album later this year.
It was clear and hot yesterday, but today it is raining a lot across the country. This rain is expected to remain strong and heavy. The expected amount by tomorrow will be up to 120 millimeters in Gangwon-do and northern Gyeonggi-do provinces, and more than 100 in the Seoul metropolitan area. Up to 80 millimeters is also expected in the southern parts of the country. The rain will mostly stop tomorrow afternoon. In addition, gusty winds are expected in most parts of the country by tomorrow. Currently, a strong wind warning is issued for Jeju Island and strong wind advisories on the west coast and the coastlines of Jeollanam-do province. Please pay special attention to avoid safety accidents. Tomorrow, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Busan will start off at 24 degrees Celsius. It will move up to 27 in Seoul and Busan, Daegu and Gyeongju, 32 degrees. Meanwhile, daytime temperatures will slow down as it rains. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.